The mining colony of Outpost Karis 7 sat like a rusted scar on the edge of habitable space, where stars died slow and the silence pressed heavy against the soul. Eli Varon had chosen this desolation deliberately. After 23 years working the core world's mega stations, surrounded by millions yet utterly alone, he'd learned that physical isolation hurt less than the emotional kind. His prefab habitat squatted on the colony's furthest edge, where the crimson dust storms painted the horizon in violent streaks. Most evenings, Eli sat on his makeshift porch, little more than reinforced polymer sheeting, nursing synthetic coffee and watching the twin moons rise over the extraction fields. The solitude didn't bother him anymore. He'd made peace with it, the way one makes peace with an old scar. The night Siren arrived, those moons hung full and amber in the sky. Eli first mistook the sound for wind scraping across metal, a common enough occurrence on Karis 7. But this noise carried a rhythm, a desperate quality that made something in his chest tighten. He set down his coffee and activated his wrist-mounted scanner, expecting to find a damaged harvester, drone, or perhaps some debris from the afternoon storm. The heat signature that appeared on his display made no sense. Biological, small, and fading fast. He found the creature huddled against his habitat's eastern wall, where the structure provided minimal shelter from the biting wind. At first glance, Eli thought it might be some native fauna. Karis 7's ecosystem database listed several scaled species. But as his headlamp swept over the small form, his breath caught. The baby dragon, for it could be nothing else, was no larger than a Terran house cat. Its scales shimmered between deep purple and midnight blue, though many were cracked and bleeding where the harsh environment had abraded them. Translucent wings, far too small for flight, wrapped protectively around its body. But what struck Eli most were its eyes, enormous, golden, and filled with an intelligence that seemed impossibly ancient for something so young. Those eyes met his, and Eli saw his own loneliness reflected back. "Well," he said softly, kneeling in the dust, "you look about as lost as I feel." The dragon flinched but didn't flee. Instead, it made a sound, part chirp, part mechanical hum, that Eli's translator implant struggled to process. His scanner provided more useful information: severe dehydration, multiple lacerations, core temperature dangerously low for a creature whose biology suggested it should burn hot. Eli had spent 2 decades refusing to care about anything beyond his work. He'd built walls so high that even he couldn't remember what lay beyond them. But something about this fragile creature abandoned in the cosmic dark, just as he'd been abandoned by purpose and connection, cracked those defenses. He extended his hand slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The dragon, Siren he would later name it after an old Earth word for siren, sniffed his fingers with a nose no bigger than Eli's thumbnail. Then with movements that spoke of desperate trust, it crawled into his palm. The warmth was immediate and profound. Not physical heat, though the dragon's body temperature began rising the moment it touched human skin. No, this was something else. A psychic resonance that Eli's augmented neural implants detected as a low-frequency hum. The dragon wasn't just seeking shelter. It was seeking connection, pack bonding with the only sentient creature it could find. Eli carried Siren inside, his hands trembling slightly. His habitat was utilitarian, sleeping alcove, workstation, recycler, not much else. But it was warm and dry, and that's what mattered. He fashioned a nest from thermal blankets near the heating unit and used his emergency medical kit to treat the worst of the lacerations. The dragon accepted his ministrations with surprising docility, those golden eyes never leaving his face. "Your parents?" Eli asked, though he knew the creature couldn't understand standard galactic. His scanner had already told him the story written in Siren's cellular structure. Draconic species, highly social, profound pack-bonding instincts. To find one this young alone meant abandonment or tragedy. In the vast indifference of space, the distinction hardly mattered. Siren chirped again, a sound that made Eli's chest ache with recognition. The first week tested them both. Eli learned that dragons, despite their mythological Earth counterparts, were obligate carnivores requiring specific mineral compounds found in the meat of nebula-dwelling space fauna. Karis 7 had none of these. What it did have was a human engineer who'd spent his career solving impossible problems. Eli modified his protein synthesizer, cross-referencing draconic nutritional requirements from the colony's xenobiology database with available organic compounds. The first batch tasted, according to Siren's disgusted expression, like recycled boot leather. The 15th iteration made the dragon's eyes glow with contentment. Human ingenuity, Eli thought with grim satisfaction, wasn't just about building better machines. It was about refusing to accept failure when something, or someone, depended on you. Siren grew rapidly, as dragons apparently did. Within 3 weeks, the creature had tripled in size, its scales hardening into armor-like plates that shimmered with an inner luminescence. The wings developed faster, stretching and strengthening until Siren could glide short distances across the habitat. But more remarkable was the bond forming between them. Dragons, Eli discovered, were empathic. Siren felt his emotions as surely as if they were its own. The creature would curl against him when isolation pressed too heavy, purring with that strange mechanical harmony that somehow soothed the ragged edges of Eli's loneliness. In return, Eli found himself talking, really talking, for the first time in years. He told Siren about Earth, about the family that had fractured when his sister died, about the guilt that drove him to the galaxy's edge. He explained why he'd chosen Karis 7, this place where human connection seemed impossible, and as he spoke, Siren listened with an intensity that made Eli wonder if perhaps understanding transcended language. The colony's xenobiologist, Dr. Tamara Chen, visited in the 4th week. "That's a Dracon, Celeste," she breathed, scanner already active. "Eli, do you understand what you have here? They're apex empaths, crucial to maintaining psychic stability in multi-species colonies. And they're endangered. Parents only abandon young when environmental catastrophe forces impossible choices." Eli felt Siren press closer against his leg, the dragon's distress palpable through their bond. "So what happens now?" Dr. Chen's expression softened. "Dracons bond for life with whoever saves them during their vulnerable period. Congratulations, Eli, you're a parent now." Parent. The word settled over Eli like a mantle he'd never expected to wear. He looked down at Siren, whose golden eyes held absolute trust, and felt something shift in his chest. The walls crumbling, not with violence but with gentle inevitability. That evening, as Care 7's twin moons rose again, Eli sat on his porch with Siren curled in his lap. The dragon had grown large enough now that this position required some creative arrangement of limbs and wings, but neither of them minded. "You know what's funny?" Eli said, stroking the ridged scales along Siren's spine. "I came here to be alone. Thought it was safer that way. Turns out the universe had other plans." Siren rumbled contentedly, a sound like distant thunder mixed with wind chimes. Eli smiled, genuinely smiled, for the first time in longer than he could remember. Two abandoned souls, human and dragon, finding salvation in each other under alien stars. Perhaps that was the real human story. Not dominance or conquest, but the stubborn refusal to let loneliness win. The determination to care, even when caring hurt, especially when caring hurt. Because sometimes survival meant more than just staying alive. Sometimes it meant learning to live again. And in the end, maybe that was humanity's greatest strength, not their technology or their tenacity, but their infinite capacity to love the lost things.